all functions of the body in Chinese medicine is connected to one or more of the 5 fundamental organs of the body. It just means that your phone every 15 minutes will just go gong like that. And it is a reminder to do this. Alcohol does actually move qi in blood in the correct quantities. Too much of anything is a poison. This is a methodology of care for human beings, which is thousands of years old and has served billions of people. Burnout is a bit like a crescendo. He just literally used a copper tool to scrape all over my back with some oil, and I had no more pain. It turned me from minding my own business in life to patient and ultimately to practitioner. When I say to people, I'm a Chinese doctor, they go, first of all, they say, you're not Chinese. The second thing is they go, is that acupuncture and herbs? And the answer is,
what if the exhaustion you're feeling isn't something you need to push through, but something your body is desperately trying to tell you? This week on P.S I Love Me, I'm joined by the brilliant Katie Brindle, an internationally renowned Chinese medicine practitioner, best-selling author, and founder of the award-winning wellness brand, the Hayo'u Method. Katie's journey is fascinating. After a car accident ended her dreams of becoming an opera singer, she was healed by Chinese medicine and so inspired by that she retrained to be a practitioner herself. For over 20 years, she's been transforming lives from everyday people to celebrities such as Fern Cotton and Ian Wright. So stay tuned to this episode if you really want to hear about the art of letting go and reinventing yourself when life changes course, how to actually recover from burnout, what Chinese medicine really teaches us about self-care and Western approaches, and what the Year of the Snake has in store for us and how to work with its energy, along with some simple tips and tricks that you can use in everyday life that really restore your vitality to a relaxed but energized state. Katie, welcome to P.S I Love Me. I'm so excited to have you on the show, especially with our similar connections with Chinese medicine. I lived in Asia for 15 years, so I really got some hands-on experience with Chinese medicine and all the wonderful Asia wellness offerings. I can't wait to get stuck into a conversation. Obviously, you have such an interesting past and what you do in the world, healing the stars such as Ian Wright and Fern Cotton. You've come from being an opera singer now to a world-renowned Chinese medicine practitioner. But let's get straight into it because the year of the horse, the year of the fire horse, is now upon us. What do we have to expect?
Lots of big stuff. And I think, you know what, as I'm speaking to you, it is hammering down with rain outside. And I'm afraid to say that despite there's a lot of stuff about the fire horse out there, which we'll come to in a second, but one of the things that it's going to bring with it is loads of rainfall. Really sorry about that. So get the wellies and get the umbrellas ready. But anyway, aside from the bad weather predictions, I think the main thing about the fire horse is it brings a very strong dynamic energy force with it. We've just come out of what we call the yin wood serpent energy, which was very much a year of internal work, shedding skins, letting go, making often quite painful changes in life and preparing the space for this very, very dynamic energy field, which only comes in once every 60 years to kind of occupy that space and to start making some really big changes. So it is very much a year of thinking big, dreaming big. It's a bit like the kind of, the American dream that was sort of started, a few hundred years ago, where you go to New York and you see these huge buildings, everything's so much bigger than it is in the UK. And the fire horse brings that kind of energy with it. But with that also comes a caution, because as a society, we quite like the dreaming big, thinking big, get your wishes to come true kind of concept. We like that. But there is, if we're not careful and if we're overdoing it, a risk of burnout. So it is very, very important this year to offset this very big, dynamic, quite exciting energy field with internal practices, yoga, meditation, qigong, walking in nature, giving yourself green spaces inside your diary where you can give yourself time to just offset, hit the grass, not always be on your phones, not always be kind of working and chasing these dreams.
Oh, good advice, because it's so easy to get excited with the year ahead and what cosmologists like yourself are giving us hints of about what's to come. But when it comes to burnout, that's something that you talk about a lot. And in fact, on a recent podcast, you were saying that 85% of the UK workforce is burnt out. And that is a crazy statistic.
I think the thing is about burnout is that we are under such unprecedented stress as a society. It's as part of the equalization of the female, which is a fantastic thing. The workforce is no longer divided into the man goes off to the office and the woman stays at home and does all the admin at home. We're all just doing everything. And I'm not suggesting we should go back to how things were before, not at all. But I'm suggesting that we do need to be fundamentally aware that the burden of responsibility on a typical adult living in the UK is unbelievably high, that you go off and do the day job and then you come home and you've got everything to do at home as well. And I think our parenting load is a lot heavier than it used to be. I mean, I certainly, in my own experience, you know, I was just sort of sent out to play when I was a kid. Like, we didn't have all these devices. Children's telly was only about, maximum 90 minutes of relevant stuff. And you were just expected to sort of go outside. And probably because we didn't have all the knowledge then about the dangers of that, we were kind of, it was okay. Whereas now as a parent, I'm like, well, I wouldn't let my children just go outside. If they were to go outside, I'd be going with them, which means back to me it goes. And I think the problem with burnout is that we don't have downtime the way that we used to, and we don't have necessarily access to nature the way that we used to. And there's just increasing pressure on our devices, which ultimately accelerate the nervous system.
Yeah, we don't have that destimulation. We're always stimulated. We're always on our phones. There's always something to occupy our minds. And it's right that you're talking about the nervous system here, because the old wellness way of thinking is, drink the green juice, hit the gym, do your yoga class, which is amazing for your nervous system. But we're not really thinking about how everyday life affects our nervous system. You can eat well, you can do all the right things, but if you're constantly in fight or flight mode, that is when you're going to get sick. And when it comes to burnout, because people have different definitions of burnout, it can be physical burnout where they're just literally physically exhausted, mental burnout where they just can't think anymore. They've got so many things to think about, whether it's running their business, sorting the kids out, being there for aging parents. How do you describe burnout?
Well, this is where I find Chinese medicine is so fascinating, because to us, burnout is, for me, very much connected to the nervous system, which I think is fair. And I think the nervous system is something which is suddenly starting to get some attention for the first time. No, I remember Dot Cotton in EastEnders would always talk about her nerves, but other than her and me, in the mainstream, I haven't heard lots of people, and I talk about my nerves because I had not a nervous breakdown per se, but I did have a breakdown that had a massive impact on my nervous system, and I was very much aware of what was going on. But the nervous system itself in Chinese medicine is connected to the liver. All functions of the body in Chinese medicine is connected to one or more of the five fundamental organs of the body, which is the heart, the lungs, the liver, the kidney, and the spleen. Okay. And the nervous system goes to the liver. Now, interestingly, the liver opens to the eye. The eye looks a bit like the shape of a liver. The liver is also responsible for the smooth flow of energy and blood around the body. So if we just put that into modern life, we've got our eyes, which are looking at unprecedented quantities of images like never before. I mean, if you just go back to the first episode of Downton Abbey, I always like this one because most people have seen a bit of Downton Abbey, so they know. They would get the newspaper in the morning. That would be it. That was the correspondence would happen in the morning for a certain period of time. There was no cars at the beginning, or very few. People were walking, or if they were lucky, they were on a horse or in a carriage. So everything was slow. Everything was just so much slow. Compare that to the modern day assault of imagery that is flashed at us to the point at which now it's so fast moving. It's now virtual. It's also AI. So we don't even know what's true or false anymore. And the reality is it's so believable. It's very difficult for this internal organ to process the difference between true and false. And the speed at which it's being assaulted by makes that processing even harder. So the liver is a bit like a pendulum. It likes the walking pace. It just likes to kind of dum-de-dum-de-dum. It's a cycle, and it likes to feel smooth, and it's at its happiest when we're walking and stretching at a nice, comfortable pace, uninterrupted in a flow. Now, compare that to the assault of images. Perhaps we're sitting on a screen, then in comes something here bleeping at you, then the doorbell goes, then something else goes, then there's a something outside going, this vehicle is turning left. And then there's a refuse van going beep, 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 like this. And all of this assault, which is what we've got to do at such a fast pace, is ultimately taking an organ which wants to smooth pace along, and it speeds it up. And it just starts going eventually like this. And then it's just spiraling. And ultimately, that's going to have an effect on everything that you said, whether it's your brain function, whether it's your bodily function, whether it's your heart rate, whether it's your ability to actually become, at this point, so overloaded, you can't make any decisions at all, that it ultimately impacts the fight or flight response, where you're in such busy fight and flight that you actually literally don't know whether you're coming or going. And ultimately, we just need to just switch it all off and calm down. But the problem with this is that we are so exhausted yet restless, because that's what that's creating, that we know that we need to do these self-care practices such as qigong or tai chi or yoga or meditation, but we're so frazzled in this exhausted yet restless state, we can't transition ourselves into what I like to describe as relaxed yet energized, which is that's that nice feeling. That's what we need to be aiming towards all day, every day.
Yeah, you're right. And it does take discipline and a strong mindset to implement more healthier practices during the day. And I also feel, burnout's been talked about a lot the last few years. But there's so much out there to deal with burnout. The wellness marketplace is flooded, and people also feel overwhelmed with
the solution.
They switch on their Instagram account. There's like, now I switch, I'll go onto Instagram later, and there'll be a million things on burnout, obviously, with us talking about it. But it's looking at small, easy practices into everyday life. And or what in terms of Chinese medicine do you recommend for your clients? I see you with the tapping on your Instagram. How does that help your
Well, I'll come back to the tapper in a minute, okay? Because let me just start. I've got some really easy solutions for this, okay? Because the key to it is to meet your body where it already is. There's no point me saying, go off and meditate for an hour, because if you're in such an exhausted yet restless state, it is that sort of frazzled sort of feeling where you just don't really know whether you're coming or going. So you're just spinning. So the first thing to say is we need to just start very, very simply indeed. So the very first thing I teach people to do is to download an app on your phone which creates a gong sound every 15 minutes. So I personally use Mindfulness Bell. There are other ones as well. And it's free. I mean, you can pay £2 a year to choose the gong, but the free one's there. And it just means that your phone every 15 minutes will just go gong like that. And it is a reminder to do this. One deep breath. And you breathe in slowly through the nose. You linger at the top of the breath, and then you breathe slowly out through the nose, and you linger at the bottom. And that's it. Now, that's the start, because it's easy. You're breathing anyway, and it has an instant relaxation on the body. And I'm not asking you to do anything really beyond what you're doing anyway, breathing. So that's the beginning. And what you'll find is if you do that every 15 minutes, because you're being reminded, and you're going to do it anyway, that immediately will have a really beautiful regulatory effect on the body. So that's just a really simple technique. Here and now, anyone listening, if you want to take it to the next level, when you hear the gong sound, you do that 5 times. And by that point, you're really relaxing. Okay, so just that's the first step. The other one to suggest is when we're in that horrible, frazzled, exhausted, yet restless sort of going into the burnout situation, it's a very important exercise is to meet the body how it's already feeling, which is what I call the fidget energy, because the body's fibrillating. It's going like this. So there's no point me immediately telling you to relax because you're too stressed. So actually, despite the fact that as a society we've been told to not fidget and to sit still, actually the best thing to do is to just do a little shimmy shake. Okay, now you can, and ideally you'd stand up to do this, but the things most people are likely to be sitting down listening to this. So just do it from a seated space and just allow that sort of fidget to just come off the body. And if you want to, you add in what I call the FR breath, which is, and it helps you let off steam. Now, the minute you've done that for 10 to 15 seconds, already that little bit of sort of restless energy has come off. Okay, now the next step from that, having just offloaded and let off a little bit of steam, because we're likely to be sitting down, then we don't go into this little S shape, which is like this. You just imagine that you're making an S in your body. You can close your eyes at this point, let your head follow last, so that you can just start to luxuriate in how the body feels as we just do a very slow, smooth little S, which is just a little massage for the body, which is just allowing it to go out of that frazzled state. And we're transitioning to stillness. And just this alone is a really good relaxation. Before we go any further, is that starting to...
I love that. Yeah, I was rushing around with this podcast. I cut my finger, so I was like, I need to get a tissue. I was adjusting the light because I'm in my new office, and I immediately feel calm. But I love the gong because that's something that I'm an advocate for, is breath work and what I teach in my modules as well. But the gong is a great tip because it's all about being reminded. It's free and it's easy, and it's kind of the world's number one remedy to really calm yourself down. Take a breath. Oh, someone gets somebody, like we're talking about the Doc Cotton, like these little phrases that have been with us for decades. They're real.
They're real and it's free, and you're doing it anyway. And the thing about the lungs, which in Chinese medicine, we call the lungs the governor of the body. So the breath governs everything else. The lungs control the heart rate. You can slow your heart rate down by slowing down your breath. That is a fact. And in Chinese medicine, the lungs also control the liver. So the movement of the lungs impacts the vibration of the liver. Now, that's Eastern medicine, but that is absolutely so that if the liver starts fibrillating, because it's like processing, and then the lung is just kind of like bringing that lovely slow breath through the body, that calms everything down. If you add this lovely S shape into it, see, livers love to stretch, and it's bringing peace and harmony into the body. And it feels really nice. I mean, eventually your body will go to stillness, and the end of that exercise actually is to take you into meditation. That's what it does. And once you get the hang of that, then the gloves are off and you've got a fair fight on your hands.
So with what you're saying, the nervous system and the liver are linked, then what does alcohol do to that whole situation then?
Right. Well, so alcohol is obviously a stimulant, and alcohol is something which is something that the liver needs to process. Now, the thing about alcohol is it's a really big subject, which was probably going to take about 10 hours to go into, because alcohol does actually move qi in blood in the correct quantities. And alcohol traditionally in Chinese medicine is used as a medicine. Okay, but that's not sort of red, white, or rosé that we necessarily get sort of, in a pub or in England. This is basically alcoholic elixirs, which are made with all sorts of different herbs, and they're used as herbal remedies traditionally, which are served in very, very small quantities to support the body. But one of the things that we say in Chinese medicine is too much of anything is a poison. So too much green juice is a poison, okay? So too much alcohol becomes a poison. And we have that expression, what's your poison? That's what we used to say in public houses. It was an expression that we use. We still do, actually, sort of. So everything is about the right quantity. And then everything is about the right thing for the specific person. Now, if we had Chinese doctors kind of absolutely everywhere on every single high street and everyone went to them all the time, it would be prescribed. But it would be prescribed based on your tongue and pulse analysis and based on your traditional diagnosis, and it would be based on what it was that you were looking to balance out in the body. Excessive amounts of alcohol is not good for anyone. No one needs me saying that. I mean, everyone knows that. But a little bit of what you fancy does you good. And so personally, what do I do with alcohol? I do have a low level quantity of alcohol most weeks, probably like 1 to 2 tops, one normally glass of red wine. And that's me. Either on a Friday or a Saturday night or a Sunday lunch, like one, and I pick it. Other than that, I drink tea.
Well, when it comes to Chinese medicine, you mentioned about the herbs, and obviously acupuncture and There's this misconception about what Chinese medicine really is. And I feel that the West hasn't really grasped hold of the true powers of Chinese medicine, because it's not all about herbs and the acupuncture, and it's a whole different realm to really understand and to use, really. And you talk about the yin shen, is that right?
Yang Sheng,
Yang
nurture
shen.
life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wellness. It's wellness.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about what Chinese medicine really is.
Yes. Okay. God, oh my goodness me. That's another massive question. Right. So people think Chinese medicine is acupuncture and herbs. So when I say to people, I'm a Chinese doctor, they go, first of all, they say, you're not Chinese, which is really weird because Western medicine can be practiced by any cultures across the world and no one bats an eyelid. But somehow or other, right, you're supposed to be Chinese to practice. Well, you don't have to be Chinese to practice Chinese medicine. There are degree courses in the UK available to anyone to study and complete, which I did. And the second thing is they go, is that acupuncture and herbs? And the answer is yes, it is. But there's more to it than that. So if we strip it back to this is a methodology of care for human beings, which is thousands of years old and has served billions of people. So this is a very time-tested, human-tested method of medicine, which is ancient and was rooted in shamanism, was highly modernized largely by Chairman Mao as a result of the Cultural Revolution, and he systemized it uh, sort of post 1964 roughly. And that's when TCM suddenly became a thing. He created TCM. Before that, it was tradition. So traditional Chinese medicine is really what was a politicized kind of version of Chinese medicine, where they let go of a lot of the old shamanic stuff, and they were heavily influenced by Western medicine to create sort of point prescriptions and to basically apply our system to their system and kind of come up with a new system, which is what they did. But nevertheless, it's still unbelievably effective as TCM itself. But before that is that traditionally across the world, human beings didn't have free healthcare and they didn't have hospitals. So what they had was people who just knew what to do because you had to survive. And if you didn't know what to do, chances are you'd die. So the uh, understanding of self-care was fundamental to all societies. And Chinese culture just took it to an unbelievably sophisticated level. It is just insane. It's like French wine or Italian food. I mean, it's just like, it's a world heritage. It is a gift that we are looking at without even appreciating that it was there. And really, when I studied Chinese medicine and qualified in acupuncture, I was doing 2-in-1 massage and all this other stuff. It was at that point that I suddenly started studying the self-care aspect, which was really what we called in clinic lifestyle advice. And I found it really interesting. And then because I liked it, I kept finding more and more books about it. And then Amazon algorithm kept feeding it to me. And so I had more books. And in reality, that's what then led me to write my book, Yang Sheng, because I thought, God, this information is absolutely priceless. It is so valuable to all of us. This is just as relevant now as it ever was. And we need this information. But I understand it because I've done a degree in it. But the average layman is not really going to understand if I say, oh, you've got liver chi stagnation. You'd be like, what on earth are you talking about? So I spent several years writing my very simple book, which is really an introduction to this incredibly rich area of healthcare, which then conduits you into many other really amazing books as well. And there's a huge reading list at the back. And that is the beginning of your journey with Chinese medicine, which takes it to the other thing that people know and say, which is, isn't it true that the Chinese doctor would they were paid to keep you healthy, and then if you got sick, they'd have to treat you for free? Somehow people kind of know this. Okay, it wasn't exactly like that, but it wasn't far off, because Chinese medicine is very much based on where we are now going as a society. Even the NHS is now coming up with this, with pre-screening and testing, because we say that a drop of prevention is a bucket of cure. That's what we say. Now, that's a far cry from the 20th century health model that I grew up with here, where you wait until you're really sick and then you go to the doctor and then they will fix it. Okay, afterwards. It's like, no, no, no. You listen to your body, you adjust your body, you align to the seasons, you constantly listening to the body's narrative, the whispers that it gives you, and then the conversation that you get before it starts shouting. But once it starts shouting, you bring in the big guns. And at that point, you can start to elicit like deeper self care practices and acupuncture and herbal medicine and all the other things.
Do you not think in today's world people become so disconnected from their own bodies? So we live in our heads, we intellectualize everything, and we've just become so disconnected in terms of what we're actually feeling, the sensations in our body, our intuition, what's really going on in our hearts, and the warning signs that are coming up that we constantly ignore.
I think we are, with podcasts such as this, we are really quickly evolving as a society. And I think it's really interesting because I love studying history, because, and I love thinking about the fact that we are in history ourselves. So if everyone just thinks about this for a second, if you think about the 20th century versus the 19th century or the 18th century or the 17th century, each one of those centuries has got very clear kind of defining areas to them. And I think it's fair to say that the second half of the 20th century was vastly different to the first half. That's accelerated during the course of our lifetime. I think it's fair as mature women to say, goodness me, if we think now about the 21st century, we are now in the second quarter of that century. We are 2026. Just take a moment to check in. Where were you in the year 2000 and what it was like then versus now? And think about how much we've accelerated as a society in the last 25 years in our experience as mature people growing through that century. So things change. One thing I can say about the 21st century is it's really fast moving. It's moving like the clappers. So 1 minute you're saying that, and if we listen to this podcast in a year, you'd probably find that barometer that you've just given me, which is indeed totally accurate today, will have completely transformed itself. And if I think about my experience in the wellness industry, because I was on the wellness thing before the wellness was a thing. In fact, I'm one of the people that like created it. Like gua sha came into the UK largely because of me and a very, very small minority of other people. But, we were told it was never going to catch on by everyone that now talks about it. So, but the reality is that it's pivoting really, really quickly. And so therefore the opinion formers and the thought leadership people are going, hang on a minute, this is ridiculous. Why would you wait to get sick? Whilst we're very blessed and lucky that A, we have a free healthcare system, and B, we have a lot of advanced healthcare methods, which can often cure all sorts of difficult things that we'd rather not have to go through. But wouldn't it be better to not have them at all? Wouldn't it be better to prevent? And imagine one thing I always say to my audience is the best thing that anybody could do for the NHS is to not need it. Not saying don't go to the doctor. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, but just imagine if you were so healthy that you never needed its service in the first place. Wouldn't that be good?
If you love P.S I Love Me and want to dive in deeper, then join the Evolve Woman, my 8-week online coaching program, which will take you on a transformative journey of self-discovery, fulfillment, and to find the joy and love you so deserve. Check out my Instagram, Lynda Williams Coach, to find out more. You talk about this, people being almost well. What are some of the signs that you're on the verge of burnout? What are some of the telltale signs, the physiological signs, the mental signs that you are on your way to a huge burnout?
Okay, so the term burnout is a Western term, and I'm not allowed to give Western medical advice because it's not my training. So I'm just going to bring it back into Chinese medicine, which I can talk about. So for us, we're looking at the liver and we're looking largely at the heart. Okay, and the thing about burnout is that burnout is a bit like a crescendo. So, and you said this earlier on in the discussion that it hits different people in different ways and at different levels of severity. So let's just sort of strip that back for a minute. So the body will start to show early signs and symptoms that will start to show that it is off balance and it is not relaxed yet energized, that's what we want to feel like. If we're starting to feel exhausted yet restless, that is how I would start describing the early symptoms. Okay, now those can get worse. You can become extremely exhausted and extremely restless to the point at which you're not able to sleep. You keep breaking down. You can't function. You can't make decisions. Your nervous system feels like it's in shreds. You are perhaps having bouts of anger. You can't, you're getting blinding headaches. You're getting migraines. You're getting sort of spots in front of the eyes. Inability to eat. You can't keep your food down. I mean, these are all the kind of things when things get exaggerated. But these early symptoms that we're looking for is that very simple equation of the body is designed to be healthy and the body is designed to feel relaxed yet energized. That's what we're looking for. So I'd like to invite people to just check in and go, okay, if I'm going to give myself a non-judgmental assessment on how relaxed yet energized do I feel right now, with 10 at really not good at all and 0 is optimum, then give yourself a number and then try the exercise that we were just doing. So stand up, shake all over the body. Obviously bear in mind of your own, I'm not seeing the person. I'm not a Western doctor looking at you in my clinic right now. So I'm just giving you advice. So, if you've got injuries or you've got conditions and you need to seek medical advice, so don't go crazy. Just do a little bit of this, okay? But then go into this sway and then go into that lovely slow breathing technique and notice how that, then do a check-in at the end. How does that number shift? Because really what we're looking for is to be in that relaxed yet energized state all the time.
Fascinating. Great advice. When it comes to how you really got into Chinese medicine, obviously you had an accident when you were an opera singer.
I wasn't an opera singer, actually. I was going to train to be an opera singer. I'd been singing all my life at that stage, and I was in that transition just before going to music college and had the accident then. So I never actually became a singer. And actually, do you know what? I'm really glad I didn't. I don't think I'd have made it anyway. So, but at the time, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
At the time, pretty devastating.
Yeah, so you're on your way to becoming an opera singer, and then the car accident happened. And then what unfolded after then?
Well, it turned me from minding my own business in life, sort of just doing my thing, to patient and ultimately to practitioner, because that's what happened was that at that stage, because this is, early, well, this is not even 20th century. This is the 1990s. So what happened was you do what you always did in those days. You go to the GP, which is what you should always do. Like you've got a free healthcare service. You've got GPs. I went to my GP, and the GP was lovely and amazing. But unfortunately, the not the practices, but the treatment modalities that the GP gave me didn't work. So I saw physio, didn't work. It does for many people, but in my case, it didn't. And I think that's kind of where we were in the healthcare market in those days. Western medicine was what you did, obviously. And if it works, great, because it often does, like most of the time it does. But then if it didn't, you were then in this kind of smorgasbord of alternative care, which was completely outside of the remit of the NHS. So now you're paying. Well, I didn't have any money because I couldn't work, because I couldn't sit up. I was having to lie flat on the floor all the time. I could sit up for about 20 minutes at a time, and then I'd have to lie back down again. And it was absolute agony. And nothing worked until eventually I just sort of somehow or other I don't really know, just you do what you do. You just sort of somehow or other get on with it, because, I was 22. I mean, I was young. So eventually, somehow or other, I just sort of managed to get myself sitting upright and sort of thought, well, I need to get a job. I mean, I need to earn some money. So I wasn't in a position to pay for osteopaths or massage therapists or any of that. And when I did go, which wasn't very often, but when I could afford, because it was in those days, it was about sort of 60, I lived in London, it was 60 to 80 pounds. That was like all my disposable income for the entire week. That meant I couldn't afford to eat half the time. I was on a really low salary. And it didn't really work anyway. So you just kind of think, well, I'm just stuck with this thing. I've just got to get on with it. And it was just luck that a few years later, I went into a TCM clinic. It was purely because it was hurting so much at that moment in time as I walked past the shop, and it had a poster inside that said 10 minutes of massage for £10. And I was in so much pain at that moment in time. I just thought, I actually don't care what they do. The usual thing, like whatever this strange, weird medicine is. I mean, they stick needles in you and like it's all a bit weird. So I don't care if they stick needles in me. I don't care. I'm in so much pain. And I was just incredibly lucky that it has so happened that the practitioner who was working in the clinic happened to be an incredibly senior practitioner. But actually, the treatment modality that he did on me didn't really require his seniority, because what he did was body gua sha. I now know. But at the time, it was this revolutionary massage technique where he just literally used a copper tool to scrape all over my back with some oil, and I had no more pain.
Wow. So literally putting oil on your back and scraping it off with a copper tool.
Yes, so just as we use the crystals on our face, I'm sure everyone's familiar with gua sha facials, it's exactly like that, but instead of using a soft crystal for beauty, it's a slimmer copper tool, and so it's and it's on the body, so it brings up the sha, the redness, which in the beauty is more like a gentle flush and a sculpt, but in the body, it's a full blown. It looks like the cupping marks that Gwyneth Paltrow had that day on the red carpet. It looks like right that. See, it's just like cupping. It's the same thing. And it just, as he did it, each stroke, the pain just lifted out of my body. And I walked out. In fact, I think he did half an hour, because I was just like, here, have my money. Just like, oh my God, here, have my credit card, have all of them. Don't stop. And I left and I had no pain for the first time I don't even remember now how many years it was, like 5, 6, 7 years. I mean, I don't even remember. It just went on throughout my 20s. And it was this epiphany. That was it. And I literally left there and thought, I am going to study this. I need to know that, where has this been all my life? And I literally cried in joy and sadness and frustration and joy. I said joy twice. A lot of joy.
Wow, what a story. And to have such a profound impact on you with such a simple technique.
I know, which is why I've kind of handed my life over in service to this incredible medical system, to serve it in my small way, to teach people how brilliant these techniques are. I mean, the technique is also called coining, and traditionally it was used with a copper coin. Okay. Now, that in modern society, I would say just be a bit careful with that, because money can be quite dirty. Um, and so if you are going to reach for the nearest 2 pence piece, just please make sure you have sterilized it to death. But to be honest with you, there are now copper gua sha tools like my own, which you can buy, which are sterilized. And I would suggest you do that instead. But you can do body gua sha with a copper coin, and you can actually do it with a jam jar lid. So everyone's got a jar. Everyone's got jars in their kitchen of some shape or form. So basically just take one, wash it, put some oil on your back and use the jar lid. And that will give you a pretty good gua sha treatment for free.
Great tip. And what other practical tools do you have? We were talking about the tapping earlier,
Yes.
the bamboo sticks that you have.
Yes, the bamboo tapper. Which I haven't got to hand, which is a bit annoying, but never mind. Maybe we can show one afterwards. But basically, tapping is a fantastic technique for the nervous system. And it's also very good when we're in that exhausted yet restless frequency where we're sort of agitated. That, again, you want to meet the body where it is. You don't really want to be going, just sit down and relax and meditate, because you don't. You reach for your phone because you're so frazzled, you can't settle in. So you can use your hands to start with. The bamboo tapper is even better because it vibrates at a frequency and you can reach your back. But to start with, you can just use the flats of your hands. If you're sensitive or elderly or delicate, you can just use your fingertips. And if you're in sort of fairly robust health, you can just use a loosely clenched fist and you can tap like this. Okay, so you can flat, cut, fingertips, fist. And really what you want to do is just go all over the body. And what you're doing is it's a percussive technique, which is relaxing yet energizing to the body, but it's uplifting. So it's a nice kind of energizing frequency. So if you're sort of starting to feel sluggish because you've been sat at your desk for too long, it's a very, very good treatment to do. And I've always said to my patients, especially if they're at offices, it's a very, very good thing to have the tapper on your desk. And every time you go to the loo, because it's a natural circuit break in what you're doing, just take it with you, and then go to the loo, do your ablutions afterwards, like step away from the loo area, because obviously it's not such good air quality, stand near it, outside it, get the tapper and just spend a minute tapping yourself. And if you haven't got the implement, just use your hands. You will find it will give you a complete energy blast straight away, because it's moving circulation and it's drawing vital breath nutrients into the body.
Easy to do.
Yeah, very.
And you also offer Bazi, is that correct? The four pillars of destiny.
Destiny, yes.
You offer these consultations and that can even help you with relationships as well. Can you tell me
Yes,
a little bit more about that?
yes. So in the olden days, uh, people are probably aware that, arranged marriage actually is still a thing in certain countries. And often in countries where arranged marriage, well, never mind where it is now, traditionally where arranged marriages were, what would happen was the chart reader would look at the charts of the two people involved to look at the compatibility. So we don't really have arranged marriages. Well, some people might in England, but traditionally that used to be a thing, but not so much now. That you can still do that as far as a relationship. So as a chart reader myself, if you came to me with some spanking new exciting boyfriend and you're like, oh my God, this is so exciting, then I can have a look at the charts laid on top of each other and we can see where the strengths and weaknesses are between the couples. It's actually a very useful tool. But the reason why I use it is because I slightly pivoted my clinic from being very much a hands-on practitioner, doing massage and reflexology and tuina and acupuncture and all of this kind of bodywork stuff that I was doing. And I had this epiphany before the whole wellness thing was a thing, which is before I brought the gua shas into the UK, where I thought, I've got to get Chinese medicine where it begins rather than the acupuncture and herbs bit. I want to get it here, the self-care bit. This is the bit that I find the most interesting, the lifestyle advice. And there's so much amazing content. So I'm going to focus on that. So I flipped my clinic into more of a diagnostic tool whereby people can come to me and I answer the fundamental questions that everybody has, which is why me, why this, why now? Because whatever our situation in life, whether it's illness or whether it's an emotional upset or whether it's a life hiccup or whether it's a life blockage where you're feeling that, whatever you were doing so far isn't what you want to do and you're just feeling stuck and stagnated and you think, well, why am I feeling like this? I don't understand. What am I supposed to do? And round it goes. That is where I come in because I can literally explain that. I can explain exactly why your body has got the symptoms it's got, why it's got the disease that it's got, why you're feeling the way that you feel. And the diagnostic tool that I use is the Bazi chart because it gives you a razor sharp understanding. It's like the footprint of the soul of the person, and from which we can look and evaluate at exactly what it is that they need to do at that moment in time to unblock the energy flow and to unblock the issues which are preventing them from that lovely, relaxed yet energized sensation, which isn't just their physical symptoms and illnesses, but also emotional disruptions and also life blockages as well.
Yeah. And everything just naturally follows once you're in that relaxed but energized state. You can think straight. You can map out, is this relationship right for me? What's happening at work, making strategic decisions. And when we're not in a state of fight or flight or have any specific blockages in our body, we're in a much more balanced state to really go out there and make the right decisions for us.
Exactly. And it's about being in your flow and ultimately learning. We're all in Earth School. So if we sort of scale this out to the absolute truth of everything is we're here to learn. Okay. We are here to learn from our mistakes and we're here to learn from each other. And we're here to leave a legacy behind us to support other people as they go through Earth School themselves. Okay. The more we do for each other, the better it is for everybody.
Yeah. No, you're right. And we're here to evolve and learn from our experience and mistakes, whatever you want to call them. And it's something that we're having a chat about the other week. I know I've been through different iterations of my career. I used to run a PR agency, a very busy PR agency in Singapore, where I had more than one burnout. And I read Simon Sinek's The Why many years ago and realized what I'm doing wasn't really my true calling. And I had to make a huge decision to transition into full-time coaching, helping people in more deep and meaningful ways. I also went through a marriage breakdown in my early 30s. I was really unhappy, and I had to leave it. A nice guy. He wasn't a bad guy, but we were very, very young when we got together. And again, it's making those hard decisions in life when something isn't serving you. And then instead of putting that, glossy cover on for everyone else and pretending that everything's okay, it's actually making those really hard, courageous decisions where you kind of know you got to do it, but it's like, ooh, it's a big step of faith, isn't it? Like a
Oh,
huge leap of faith.
I mean, similar for me because my husband and I we really did consciously uncouple over the last 15 months, and we really loved each other. We still do. We really do. I went on Attie Jules' podcast recently, which is all about divorce, the big D, and she was kind of ready for me to have to sort of say, "Rah, rah," but I was like, no, I'm really sorry. Like he's a really really good man. I mean, he's a great man, and it was a very very difficult decision, but sometimes we just need a new chapter. And it's really hard, the level of disruption we go through, but equally, it life's difficult and we live a lot longer these days. In the olden days, people used to die all the time. So, marriages, whilst yes, were lifelong commitments, but often the woman would die in childbirth, the man would go to war, one of you would get eradicated by some, horrendous epidemic, and then the dice would roll and then you'd marry off with someone else. And it's not like that now. We're living longer lives and different aspects of ourselves come at different moments. And sometimes, even though you've not fallen out, you're just somehow not quite resonating in the right way. And sometimes it has to be transitioned out of.
Mm. And again, going back to feeling well, because when we're in our own bodies, we understand what feels good and bad. We can tap into our intuition and our gut instinct of whether a relationship or a deal at work feels right or wrong. But if we're in fight or flight mode all the time, we're not picking up on those signals about how things feel, not just is it logistically right? On paper, does it look right? We again going back to if we're switched off by how we actually feel, what is our gut telling us? And we do have to be well, we have to be in a calm, relaxed, energized state to be able to know what is right for us and how to embrace our true authentic selves.
Exactly. I mean, totally agree. I mean, that's quite the story that you've given there in terms of your younger years and what's brought you and folded into this incredible gift that you're giving everyone now, which is the benefit of all the learning that you've had from it.
Yes, and both of those instances were really hard. I had this identity that I had to shake off. I was what other people call me the PR queen of Singapore. Who's you are PR now? Like, wow, what are you doing? You're so successful. And I was a somebody, I was a somebody in Singapore and I came back to the UK and I was a nobody. And I
Yeah.
had to be okay with being a nobody.
Well, not anymore.
But I, but I, But you have to get to that stage where you don't care. You give zero fucks. You give zero fucks what anyone thinks of you. And only when you get to that stage in life can you really embrace confidently your true authentic self. And I got to that stage and I had so many signs, whether it was burnouts, whether it was my dating life was a disaster. Like I had so many different signs that me being in Singapore, number one, and me running my PR agency, number two, was no longer serving me. And I had to put a plan in place to change. Not only was I giving up a successful business, but I was also moving countries and moving back to the place where I grew up. And if you'd have told me 5 years before the year I did it, I'll be moving back to your home village, I'd be like, no way am I moving back there. But it's funny how we evolve and change and you realize what is really important to you, what fills your soul, what we're meant to do. And I love what you were saying before about legacy, because we are all here in service to each other in a non-biblical, non-spiritual way, or whatever way you want to perceive that. I do believe that we are here in service to others.
I honestly, totally, 100%. I mean, I personally cannot see it any other way. That is what makes meaning of it all. And helping other people benefit from your own pain, that's compassion.
Yeah.
And from a Chinese perspective, that is one of the highest forms of human expression, which is extremely good and beneficial to cultivate. And I do this thing with my community called the Love Grid, where sort of we've got the lovers, and the gratefuls. So the lovers are the people that put their love into the grid, and then the people that need it, then they can pull it in with, but they have to give gratitude. So the point is that if you're a receiver of it, it's gratitude that you're giving back because the lovers have suffered to give you the love. And it's a really beautiful energy. When I do it, even though it's online, you think, God, come on, Kate, that's nonsense. It's like, no, you can feel the energy like that. And I've got living examples of when I've recorded it live on feeds. You can see the aura around me suddenly go bam. Like, in fact, I can see it right now. It's just come on as I've done it. The aura just goes like that. And you think, where, like, no way. We're just on a phone, for goodness sake. But to suffer on behalf of someone else is one of the greatest things any human being can do for someone else. And it is a really beautiful soul speak.
Yeah. And what's next for you? What have you got coming up in terms of
Well,
offering? What can we get
um,
involved in or buy?
well, funnily enough, it's very much about, I was really going great guns, sort of, I guess, business wise, lockdown, it suddenly all got very busy for me. Not intentionally. Um, I was minding my own business. Hayo'u was up and running, and um, lockdown started, and it was all horrendous. And as a Eastern practitioner, obviously, my services were not required in the NHS hospitals, obviously. But as somebody that was, I thought I've got to help, I've got to serve, I've got to do something. So for me, it was very much about helping people at home, which is what I did. So I went live every single day for the whole of lockdown, all of it, morning, noon, and night, every single day, every day without fail, weekends, days, every day, morning, noon, and night, morning, noon, and night, to sort of keep people's morale. And even to this day, people come up to me in the street, not loads of people because I'm not Trini, but like nevertheless, often, like, people come and go, "Oh, you kept me going in lockdown. I'm so grateful. Like, I found you in lockdown through whoever it was." And, those lives really kept me going. And but that nevertheless, I did actually end up with a bit of burnout, overgiving, nice burnout, but nevertheless burnout. So I used the year of the snake last year to really feed back into myself. I was pretty frazzled. I was overwhelmed by the stresses of running this business. I'm not a businesswoman. I was a woman in business. It's not the same thing. I don't have what it takes to do it like that. It's just not my energy structure, and it really did take the life out of me. And so, even though the business is still running, I just really downsized it. I downsized myself, and I had to stop doing all the live feeds because I had to really take a break and I had to really focus on myself. So with that time, wrote my second book, which will be coming out later this year, and just had a little bit of reevaluation in terms of how I was going to offer what I offer. So now there's the podcast, which I love, and coming on podcasts with you and people like you, because it's a really easy way to get the word out. And what I now want to really do is really not worry too much about the commercial side of what I do, because the universe has sort of blessed me and I'm lucky. I don't really have to worry from that. It sort of pays me in other ways. It's really weird, but it does. So my job is to get the word out there, and that's what I want to do. So really just evangelize the message of self-care from this incredible viewpoint and standpoint of Chinese medicine, because it is so comprehensive, so valuable, such beautiful, precious wisdom that this world needs to know, that I just want to shout on the soapbox in every single possible platform I can and just tell everyone, roll up, roll up. How about the solution? Which is really what I'm doing.
Yeah, reach as many people as possible through your different platforms. And
in a nutshell, that was a much better way of answering the question. I just rambled on. Yes.
no. Now, the Hayo'u method. What does Hayo'u mean?
Hayo'u was a fusion word between Hao, which is very badly pronounced, by the way, which is Chinese for well and good, and Hey You, which is the English of you do it for yourself. So it was a self-care brand. And this was before self-care was a thing. And it was all because in clinic, I was just always used to the fact that people would come to me, because at this stage, where sort of turn of the 21st century, which, as I've said, has moved on very fast. But at those days, because we were used to a medical system where they would fix us, because in the 20th century, they often did. And it was pretty good stuff, to be honest, if you compared to dying at 45, which was what was happening at the beginning of the century. And what would then happen is if the Western doctor hadn't managed to do so, because for whatever reason you were in the category of it didn't work, then they'd turn to the alternative practitioner. That's us. So that's our job to fix them. And they'd sit there and go, now you're going to get out your weird needles. I don't really, and stick them in my eye, joking aside. I don't really understand what you're doing or why you're doing it, but my friend said it works. So here I am. You do it. You do it with this weird way. And so at that point, I was like, right, I want you to do it. So the idea of Hayo'u is I give you the tools and the wisdom so that you can do it for yourself. And it was very much based on some simple curated tools that are unbelievably powerful, like the gua sha crystal for the face, which then went on to become a world award-winning product. Gua sha is a global beauty trend. And I was globally one of the key instigators. Within the UK, I was probably the instigator, but certainly across the world, there was a few of us. And it just spread like wildfire. And the body gua sha is yet to catch on to such an extent, but body tapping and all of the other techniques which I teach using the tools.
Yeah. And as we come to the end, as we come to the end of this podcast, what do you want our listeners to take away from this session? If there's one thing that they can take away from Katie Brindle, what would that be?
That your body is unbelievably powerful and it has the power to cure itself as long as you know what the techniques are to do. And the further entrenched into the dis-ease it is, then obviously the more complicated it becomes and the more we have to work in conjunction with your consultants. But if you strip it back to the early stages of illness, it is pretty easy to rectify it and they are designed to be healthy.
Amazing. We have the power. The power is within.
Yes, exactly. God, you can see you're in PR. You soundbite everything I say. This is great. You could just cut me out this podcast and go, Katie says, and then give us a one pager. So good.
Oh, there's still some PR life in the old dog yet.
Seriously is. You literally paraphrase everything. It's brilliant.
Oh, well, Katie, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on P.S. I Love Me. I'm going to go and buy one of those tappers, actually. So when I leave my office and go into the house to go to the loo, I'll be tapping on the way to the loo. I love it.
Honestly, it's so good for you. But honestly, thank you so much for having me. It's been such a joy to speak to you.
Yeah.
And I hope to meet you.
And when is the book out?
Later this year, September, October.
Okay. I can't wait to read it.
Oh, thank you.
That's it for today's episode of P.S. I Love Me. I hope you've learned some interesting nuggets to weave into your everyday life to feel a little lighter, brighter, and inspired. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It helps more high-achieving women like yourselves to find us. And don't forget, wherever you are at in life, you are more than enough.